What's up? How's it going? Thad Brown with you on the Endgame. This is Rochester First. The kids, all the smart ones, all the cool ones, all the ones that you want to hang out with, they all call this channel Rock One. And you should too, by the way. It's awesome. It's just a great, cool name. It's the perfect name. Rochester First is also a cool name, but Rock One is cooler in my opinion. Anyway, we are all red today. Bills defeat Monday. Red alert time, right? Season's over. Forget about the Super Bowl. It's never happening. No, we're not going to go there today. That's not where this game was yesterday. We're going to talk about it for sure. Look, there's a lot to get to from this game. It was not ideal. It was a surprising loss, I think, in a lot of ways. But it's not something that's going to shock or cause awe. Look, this is the NFL. I was having a conversation with Josh Reed from WIVB Plus. You see him on BKL Nightly here a couple days a week. And one of the things I said was, you look around the league, all the stupid things that happen in this league. You know, the Eagles blowing a 14-point lead at home, albeit to a good Broncos team, but still, you know, having an offense in Philadelphia. The defending Super Bowl champs, mind you, a team that was also 4-0 when we all woke up yesterday. Even that team has what seems to be large issues and problems that are just, grasping for straws, angst-inducing things. And they were the team that won the championship last year. So I said to Josh, look, you look at all the dumb things that happen with the Eagles and, are the Packers good? How the heck are the Ravens one of the worst 1-4 teams ever when we thought a month ago they were a legit Super Bowl contender? And obviously, look, there are answers to all these things. The bottom line is dumb things happen around the league all the time. It just seems like the Bills avoid those dumb things. And that was the point I made to Josh as we were watching the Bills warm up for the Patriots. All the dumb things that happen around the NFL, it doesn't seem like they ever happen in Buffalo. And that's to the Bills' credit. But you know what? Yesterday was just the league being the league. It was a dumb thing that happened. And those are things that are going to happen in this league. Now, there are reasons for it, and there are things to be concerned about. We're going to talk about them. But top of the mind, like off the bat, big picture discussion of where the Bills are at. This is not the end of the world. This is just a bad game. Yes, it did expose some flaws, but this is still the AFC favorite, probably by a significant margin. This is still a team that has every reason to think they should go to the Super Bowl if they can get some of these things fixed, or if they can fix them just for the games they play in January. So this is not an end of the world Monday for the Bills, even if I've got all the red lights on behind me today. But we are going to talk about some of the things that were a problem. And let me start with this. This is not going to be a blame the defense show. Okay, you can point out flaws with the defense, and there are some, and we might get to them a little bit later on. But you look at what this defense did yesterday. Number one, Bills fumble on the opening possession. Patriots turn around and fumble it right back. The Bills defense got that fumble back immediately. Same quarter, still in the first quarter, Bills offense fumbles again inside their own 15. Bills defense holds it to a field goal. This defense has been averaging 24 points a game this season. They gave up 23 in this game. They were who they have been all year. And they were who they've been all year without their best player, Ed Oliver, on the field. So if you want to start handing out blame, and yes, there are things that you might want to hope are better with the defense, this is not a blame the defense loss. They did their job in many ways. I mean, if they don't show up early in that game when the Bills are putting the ball on the ground every other drive, that game would have been 14-3 at halftime, and we'd be talking about the Bills getting blown out, or Josh Allen trying to, pull one of those amazing Ravens-esque comebacks again. So this game is not going to be on the defense. This discussion today is not going to be about, largely at least, defensive problems. This is going to be about the offense. Okay, and the number one place I want to start with is the run game, because I've been talking about this for weeks. All right, if you can stop or significantly take away James Cook and the run game, you can put that Bills offense into molasses to where it looks consistently bad. At least consistently like a struggle. It's never that bad when you have Josh Allen. But there are significant chunks of this game and prior games the Bills have played where no run game means no easy button, and no easy button means Josh Allen is swimming uphill to move the ball, consistently. Again, he can do it because he's ridiculous, but it's not a place the offense wants to live. So James Cook threw 5 games. All right. In the first game against the Ravens and last night, didn't rush for 50 yards. In the 3 games in the middle, he was over 100. there's probably a correlation there about how the offense looked. Keep in mind, yeah, they scored 41 on Baltimore, but almost half of that came late when it was catch-up time, and it was Josh Allen just throwing the ball all over the yard. When that game was not in the weird portion of that game, it was 40-23, which is not too dissimilar from what the Bills put on the board last night. Yeah, they dominated the Jets, but the Jets have their own myriad of problems that make things easy for everybody else. And while the Bills did put 31 on both the Saints and the Dolphins, both of those games involved a roughing the punter penalty. I mean, these are things you cannot expect to continue to get away with, and getting away with is the operative term here. When the Bills had in those last two games before New England, the long chunks where the run game wasn't working and the Bills were going 3 and out, 4 and out, not scoring points, not on 6 drives in a row, but 2 or 3, to where you could tell there was an issue, especially in the Miami game. The primary culprit of that is not being able to run the ball. This is a run-first team now, even though their quarterback is the MVP. And when they can't do that, this offense struggles because they don't have the guys on the outside to win consistently. The receivers are just not that talented. And look, that's by design. That's where the Bills wanted to put their resources. Brandon Beane's not intending to go out and find bad receivers, but they are putting their resources in other places. They are paying James Cook. They are paying multiple guys on the defense. They have worked to spend assets and build up an offensive line into one of the best units in the NFL. That's just how they want to build a team. We can spend days arguing about how much sense that makes. That this is who we got now. This is the hand the Bills have been dealt, at least for now. We can get into a conversation about trade deadline and who should be added. But for now, the team the Bills have right now is not strong on the outside. So they have to rely on running the ball. And if they can't run the ball, then they really have to rely on Josh Allen putting on the Superman cape. And that's one of the reasons why they only put 20 points on the board last night. And even the 20 points they scored last night were significantly augmented in the fourth quarter by 3 15-yard New England penalties. So it wasn't like this team was going up and down the field last night against New England and then failing in the red zone or something. They had to get help from the Patriots as it was in the fourth quarter to move the ball. And the roughing the punter thing, I mean, do you know how rare that is? So far through 5 weeks, there are 4 roughing the kicker and or punter penalties in the NFL, and the Bills have benefited from 2 of them. So this offense, even though, 30 points and winning by 2 scores, and that's all well and good, there is, I don't want to say a blueprint, but at least a guidebook to how you can really cause his offense problems. If you have a team and a front 7 and a defensive line that can make running the ball a pain in the neck, then this Bills offense is going to have difficulty getting up and down the field. Now, the good news for the Bills is they still have a really good offensive line. I mean, top 5 at minimum. They still have a really good running back in James Cook, who is a borderline top 5 back. And a guy who belongs in the upper tier. It's not like there's 5 guys who are ridiculously better and then he's the best of the rest. No, he is a guy that belongs in the top tier of the NFL. And then you have Josh Allen, one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So the floor for this offense is still going to be fairly high. But I think before last night, we thought the floor was, they could do whatever they want and they're going to score 28 or 30 every week. That's just not the case. We saw last night that the Patriots, who are a good defense, maybe better than we thought, but not a ridiculous defense, held the Bills to 20, and they did it by helping the Bills to some points along the way. I think at some point, the Bills are going to have to find an answer to what happens if they have trouble running the ball, because the answer can't just be Josh Allen do it all. Because you think about where this team wants to go, right? I just said at the top of the show, this is still a Super Bowl contender, a team with legit Super Bowl championships or Super Bowl hopes. Who is on the path to the Super Bowl? Who is on the path to a championship? Probably the Chiefs. We'll find out more about them tonight when they take on Jacksonville, a surprising 3-1 Jags team. Probably the Eagles, despite their offensive, issues. Their confounding problems to, move the ball with Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Hurts. Both of those teams have really good run defenses. Maybe it's Denver, another really good run defense. How about the Colts, who are surprising this year? Another team that really is strong on the defensive side of the ball. So you might look at the Bills' offense and think, well, you got Cook and you got the offensive line, and there are not many teams who can stand up to that. And that's true. The Bills are not going to run into a New England every week or a team that's like New England every week. But they are going to see them in January. And if you don't have something else you can go to beyond Josh, please save us, when James Cook isn't going for $115 every week, you're probably not going to be the team holding up that Vince Lombardi at the end. And this is something that I have talked about week after week after week, going all the way back to the Baltimore game. And you can see it when the run game is not there. The Bills just don't go up and down the field as easy. And it's been being masked by fortunate breaks with turnovers. It's being masked by the roughing the punter stuff. And it's being masked by the opponent. I mean, Jets, Saints, Dolphins aren't exactly a murderer's row of NFL defenses. And that Baltimore game is looking worse and worse by the second. To be fair, the Bills were going to probably be the only team that's going to face a healthy Baltimore defense all year long. But still, the Ravens, I don't know how much of that you can just put on injuries. So look, the Bills' offense is going to be okay this year. And by okay, I mean they're going to be really good and a problem for most everybody. But the Patriots reminded us, again, didn't prove, didn't expose, reminded us that when the Bills don't have an easy time running the ball, then the whole offense goes into molasses. And they have to find an answer to that. And we were talking about it in the media room last night. Do you go trade for a receiver? Who might be available at the trade deadline? Maybe Chris Olave from the Saints? That wouldn't be a terrible idea. I hate the idea of risking, a big asset spend on Olave, who's had trouble avoiding concussions through the years. Another guy we talked about was DJ Moore from the Bears, who seems to be marginalized with Rome Odunze's ascension. Luther Bird is the guy they just drafted this year. DJ Moore to me would be a fun idea. But the goal or the philosophy the Bills have had about, we don't need to, remember the Brandon Beane, WGR Buffalo radio argument, wondering why he continues to get pressed on, going out to find a top receiver. And again, in his defense, you can't have everything as an NFL GM. You got to pick and choose to a degree what you want to spend on. But I think it's been revealed here that there is a ceiling to what this Bills offense can be if you run into a team who can just stop the run. They don't even have to be good in the secondary. I mean, the Patriots are a well below average pass defense right now. They're sixth worst in EPA allowed per, I think it's attempt. That wasn't even a good pass defense last night, and the Bills couldn't pivot from the run and exploit it for more than 20 points at home with the Patriots donating penalty after penalty. So yeah, I get why Brandon Beane didn't go crazy necessarily finding a top-tier receiver in the offseason, coming off a year last year where the offense was great and darn near went to the Super Bowl. I get that. Well, now we're in a different season. And now the Bills may need to find somebody else on the outside, even if it means spending a big asset for a dreaded wide receiver one. At least somebody who can win more on the outside. Because Keon Coleman's been okay. He makes a couple of decent plays. I did like the third down grab. That was a big grab in that game last night. Good for him. Josh Palmer, I think, isn't being exploited enough. His snaps have been down the last 3 games. Not necessarily this one, but the 2 before. He's a guy who I think among all the receivers, I give him the best chance to win a one-on-one. Curtis Samuel's made a couple plays. Elijah Moore didn't get a jersey last night. He was a healthy scratch, but he's had moments. But collectively, this group cannot be counted on to be the savior if James Cook is not available. So the Bills may need to go out and find somebody else. And if it is a wide receiver one, if it is a mouth you have to feed more often than just when they're open, then maybe that's the answer. Because I don't have confidence that this offense against a good run defense has enough to win 2 or 3 games in January without having a lot of things bounce their way. And I'll get to the bounces in a second. I do want to talk real quick, though, about one of the guys who did, make a an appearance or certainly some noise last night in terms of as a pass catcher, and that's Dalton Kincaid. 6 catches, 109, I think it was, over 100 yards, first career 100-yard game. Look, he was really good. And when you start digging into the underlying numbers with Kincaid, there's an argument that he should be getting the ball more. Right now, for all tight ends with at least 20 targets, which isn't a huge group, but, I don't want to include the tight ends that have like 12 or 13 targets who are, seeing 3 balls a week. Kincaid's in a different level than that. So for tight ends who have gotten 20 targets through 5 games this year, Kincaid is number 2 in success rate, number 2 in catch rate. So essentially what that happens is when you throw the ball in his direction, way more often than not, something good is happening. He's second so far this year in yards per route run, but only 25th in snaps. And that's the thing. His snaps are down from the first half of last year in year 1. Now, we've talked a little bit about what the reasons for that are. Number 1 is Jackson Hawes. The Bills found someone else who can actually block in this league, a defensive end and a linebacker, and they want that guy in the game more often to run the ball. If you forgot, like 60 seconds ago, I was talking about how important the run game was. So you want Jackson Hawes on the field for that. And Kincaid is not that guy. Now, what Kincaid is, a larger receiver, essentially. He's a good blocker if you can get him out, or he's at least an acceptable blocker, I'll say, if you can get him out on the outside with some spectacular wins. I mean, that dude has had moments this year where he's taken defensive backs and powered that guy into the water cooler. So he can have big wins. He's not the most dependable blocker, but when you get him on the outside, that's where he can have an advantage and he can find some success. But that's the only spot you can use him. So I think that's a big part of the reason why the snaps are down. His routes run this year are the same as last year, at least per game. Right now he's at 105 routes run or so. That's 20 per game. Last year he had 259 routes in 13 games, also 20 per game. He had more year 1, but we're going to move past year 1. Last 2 years, routes run per game, Kincaid is right about the same as last year and this year. So the question is, well, look, if he's got this wildly good success rate and this wildly good catch rate, why not throw him the ball more, right? Makes sense. Well, number 1, look, again with the Patriots, we'll go back to the matchup last night. That team, on paper at least, is not a good pass defense. Like I said, 6th worst in the NFL EPA per attempt. But you look at the guys on the team, the 2 corners, Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez, are, at least in theory, really, really good. And I mean, they've put a lot on film that says they're really, really good too. So what do you do if you're an offense? Well, you throw the ball on that defense, but you don't throw it against the corners. Who does that probably go to? I would think the tight end. And this is not the knock what Kincaid did last night. You got to still make the catches. You got to still get open. The first catch he had on that little Josh Allen scramble near his own goal line up the middle is a ridiculously good catch. That's what you want Kincaid. That's what Kincaid can do best. Show off the hands, right? You put that ball in a weird spot, he's probably going to make the catch. I know people talk about the AFC Championship game, whatever. It's not going to happen every time. Most of the time, Kincaid has the hands to make the really difficult catch look very manageable. And he did that in the first play last night. And this is kind of what the Bills have been able to do with Kincaid. You don't ask him to inline block. Don't put him up against the defensive end. Put him on the outside. Use him as a receiver. Let him find space. Let him run after the catch. This is kind of his niche, his role, his comfort zone. This is his wheelhouse. And give the Bills credit for figuring that out with Kincaid. But I don't know if that means you can just throw him the ball over and over and over and it'll improve the offense. Whether Kincaid can be that plan B off of James Cook in the run game. Because when you think about the great tight ends in the NFL, why is a tight end a problem? Well, it's pretty simple. The really good tight end is too quick and athletic for a linebacker to cover and too big and strong and physical for a defensive back to cover. The thing with Kincaid is he only qualifies for one of those categories. He's absolutely too athletic and too quick for a lot of linebackers, even some safeties. Now, I've seen him blow, Kyle Duggar. You make one move in the line of scrimmage and go, and Duggar's behind Kincaid by 2 steps. So Kincaid can beat that type of player. But he's not physical enough if you want to put a defensive back on him or an ultra, uber athletic linebacker. Someone, Terrell Bernard, maybe even a notch above that in terms of athleticism. You got to be ridiculous, but you can do it Because if you can match Cade's athleticism, he's not going to out-physical you. Or at least he hasn't shown the ability to do that yet. He's not Travis Kelce, where he can just post up a guy over the middle and make the catch no matter where that player is. So this is why I have my doubts about Kincaid, being the guy, being the number one receiver. Carl Jones said it best on BKL Nightly last night. You can watch that, on demand, YouTube, Spotify, right here in Rochester First. Kincaid doesn't have, or at least has not shown yet, that ability to just out-physical someone. And you need to have that if you're going to be the elite tight end. Because the elite receiver can be just so quick and athletic. Garrett Wilson, JSN in Seattle. You don't have to necessarily be the ridiculous physical guy to be a number one receiver, because if you're just that quick, then you're quicker than everybody. Then defensive back, safety, corner, linebacker, it don't matter. You're just that athletic that no one can cover you. Well, there's no tight end that's going to match up that way. They're just not built that way. They're bigger guys, right? So if you're going to be that type of tight end, think Kelce, Tony Gonzalez, Mark Andrews at his height, George Kittle, you've got to have the physical dimension to you to be that elite guy, and Kincaid hasn't showed that yet. So if you want to make Kincaid, your answer to James Cook, you're leaving out a big chunk of what you need from the tight ends to make that work. The other thing about the offense from last night that I want to get into, the other big story last night certainly was the mistakes, the penalties and turnovers, okay? So, number one, let's start with the penalties. Bills had 11 last night, second game in a row. Here's the thing about that. I'm not even worried about the penalties. I don't think it's a concern, and here's why. 4 of the last 5 seasons, not this year, 4 of the last 5 full seasons, the Bills were top 10 in penalties committed. So this has been a team that has already been one of the more penalty prone in the NFL as it was the last 5 years. You know what else happened the last 5 years? The Bills won the AFC East each of the last 5 years. They went to the divisional round and at least won one playoff game each of the last 5 years. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and tell you penalties are good, but the Bills are certainly living just fine being a high rate penalty team. The one year they did not finish in the top 10 in penalties, that was the year that Damar Hamlin had the cardiac arrest and the Bills played one less game than everybody else. They were still 16th. So look, this team under Sean McDermott in its Josh Allen success era has been a high penalty committing team. It's just who they are. I'm sure they would prefer not to be. And look, it has burned them at times in the last 5 years when they've committed more than 10 penalties. They're 5-4. So they're barely above 500 when they put 10 or 11 flags or more on the field. Now, but again, if you do your math really quick and you have at least a second grade, numbers brain, 5 + 4 is only 9. 9 games since the start of 2020, which is 89 games, committing 10 penalties, you can live with that. It's something I'm sure the Bills would prefer not to do, but the penalties are not going to be the undoing of this team, at least big picture. Sure, game to game, if you have a 12 penalty game, obviously that's a problem. But the Bills are only going to do that once twice a season at most, and by being a high penalty team, it hasn't hurt them. So I'm not going to even worry about the penalties. I don't know what the explanation is. Usually, I've always thought that penalties are a lesser talented player trying to keep up with a more talented player. And when you're a Bills team that wins 11, 12, 13 games a year, you should have the more talented player more often than not. But regardless, I don't care, okay? Like it would be nice if the Bills didn't do it as often. When they commit 10 or more, it's a problem. But I'm not worried about the penalties one iota when you consider what the Bills have been the last 5 years. Turnovers are different. For the first time in 26 games against the Patriots, the Bills did not win the turnover battle. And it shouldn't come as a shock that when you lose the turnover battle, you are more likely to lose games no matter who the opponent is. This is a reality the Bills have not had to deal with over the last 26 games because they don't lose the turnover battle a lot. Give the defense credit. One of the reasons for that is the Bills have been top 4 or 5 in forcing turnovers each of the last 5 years. Now this year, the Bills have, I think it's 1 turnover a game. I didn't look this one up before. I'll check it out real quick. So I think the Bills right now have 5 turnovers in 5 games. which is a ridiculously low number for them because normally they force about 30 a year, which is 2 a game. And yeah, one more turnover a game isn't a big deal. Yeah. So the Bills defense has forced exactly 1 turnover in each of the first 5 games this year. So that's below their normal count and certainly would not put them in a elite category when it comes to just turnovers forced. Forget about the differential, just turnovers forced. 1 a game is not good enough for anybody, including the Bills defense. It's not bad. You're middle of the road. Here, I can tell you right now. Let's go back to last year. Turnovers forced by a defense just to, here we go, team defense. So 17 turnovers, the Bills are on a current rate. That would put them tied for 20th. So not the worst ever, but not good. So part of the issue with the turnovers is that the defense hasn't forced as many as they usually do. And yeah, that's on them to a degree. But to me, the bigger change, the bigger difference is on offense. Primarily with fumbles. We've talked a little bit about this show, I think once or twice before, that the Bills coming into last night's game had a pretty wild fumble lost avoidance stat going. The Bills had not lost a fumble since September 29th last year against Baltimore. That's over a calendar year. I think including the playoffs, it would be, 13, 16, 4, so 20 games. 20 games in a row where the Bills had not lost a fumble. Now, it didn't mean the Bills weren't fumbling. In fact, they had recovered 12 consecutive of their own fumbles in a row. Now, recovering fumbles for the most part is a coin flip. Like, there's no skill to it. The ball is shaped weird. It just bounces however it bounces. So not quite exactly, because it's not 50-50 to recover fumbles. But for the most part, recovering 12 fumbles in a row is like flipping a coin and getting heads 12 times in a row. So it's really, really lucky. Now, to the Bills' credit, the other part of why they haven't lost that many fumbles is because they didn't fumble a lot last year. They only had 9 fumbles last year, which was best in the NFL. So yeah, you might get lucky recovering your own fumble, but if you're not putting the ball on the ground a lot, you're probably not going to lose fumbles that way either. So while recovering fumbles is luck, not fumbling is a skill, and a skill the Bills played at the highest level in the league last season. That has not been the case this year. They had 9 fumbles all last year. This year, they're already at 6. So that puts them on pace for 20. That would be one of the worst numbers in the NFL if that's what they finished with. Sean McDermott said after the game last night, usually we do what they did, meaning the Bills make less mistakes and primarily the Bills win the turnover battle. Well, like we said, this year, the Bills defense has not been as good forcing turnovers, but more importantly, the Bills offense has been much worse at avoiding turnovers. Josh Allen with the interception is fine. He's only got 2 so far. That puts him on pace for about 7. Totally acceptable. In fact, really good for the amount of time that the Bills ask him to throw the ball. The fumbling is the issue. That's the thing that has changed. And it's not just, guys who don't touch the ball a lot. It's not like it's Curtis Samuel and, Ray Davis. These are primarily ball handlers who have put the ball on the ground. Josh Allen, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Brandon Codrington, when he was the return man. Those are the guys who have committed the fumbles for the Bills this year. So the more you put the ball on the ground, and if the Bills are going to double their fumble rate from last year, which is what they're on pace to do right now, you're probably going to lose a few more of them than you did last year as well. And those are the kind of mistakes, going back to the conversation about, who was at fault for this game and why it was primarily the offense. When you don't have that run game easy button, and then you compound that by putting the ball on the ground more often, which is opening the door for more turnovers and a worse turnover rate, which is what we've seen from the Bills, then that makes it even harder when you don't have something else to go to beyond the run game. One of the reasons the Bills have been able to put up the points they've had, one of the reasons, not all the reasons, one of the reasons is they've been fortunate in the turnover game. Last year, the offense showed some skill, not putting the ball on the ground a lot. This year, that has not happened. And at some point, that good fortune probably turns over. You've heard the term regression to the mean. 2 fumbles lost the first quarter last night was a good example of that. So, as much as the Bills offense is still elite, is still a top 3 or 4 group, you can see some of the edges being frayed. Not to where there's a concern about, they're not going to, win the division or go to the playoffs. But can this team be championship caliber when it needs to be? Well, if they're fumbling at double the rate they were last year, if you assume they don't have the ridiculous luck in recovering fumbles they had last year, and if they don't figure out something else to do when the run game is slowed down that's not Josh Allen, please find a play, then it's hard to see this team winning 3 games in January. Now, look, when the Bills get Ed Oliver back, that'll help the defense out. Maybe the margin for error gets bigger because right now, like I said, the defense is giving up 24 points a game. Even for a great offense like the Bills, that's a tough ask. That's not where you want to live on a regular basis. But I think the belief that the offense was going to be fine because they scored 30 points in 8 or 9, whatever games it was last year, I'm not there anymore. It's still a good offense with a high floor. But there are concerns and there are things that are, when you look at the circumstances around this offensive success, there are reasons to think that it will not continue, that the Bills won't be as fortunate as they have been this year and last year. And they need to come up with something else that most likely involves improving what you're getting out of your pass catchers, whether it is going to Dalton Kincaid more often because he's having a third-year breakout. And keep in mind, in Buffalo, when young players have their big breakout year, it's almost always year 3. It's one of the reasons why I still held out hope for Kincaid this year, because year 3 is the year where Bills players tend to pop. So that might be happening. So that might be option 1. Option 2 is going out and trading for somebody at the trade deadline. And I'm sure there will be some level of receiver available, whether it is for a price the Bills want to pay and a guy who can really have an impact remains to be seen. Again, we threw out Chris Olave and DJ Moore. Those were some of the names we talked about amongst the media last night, after the game. I think they make some sense, but just because I think they make sense doesn't mean they'll be available. So look, like I said, this is not an end of the world type day for the Bills. Look, this is still a high-level team with Super Bowl aspirations, but the offense has some questions. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Stephon Diggs' game and, what the Patriots now present threat-wise. Is this a team that really could steal the division? We'll address that after this. You're watching the Endgame right here on Rochester First. We're back after a break. We're back on the Endgame here on Monday, October the 6th. Happy birthday to my daughter. She's at college celebrating, hopefully being good. It's Monday. Better be on her studies today. But it's her birthday. I guess she can do what she wants, right? Have some fun. Enjoy it. Live it up. All right, Bills fans probably not feeling like they want to enjoy much of anything today. Look, hey, it's one loss, okay? Like it was going to happen. I will take a little bit of the blame. I did begin a conversation with one member of the media yesterday talking about, do you think they go 17-0? Because I really thought that was a thing that was on the table. I should know better. It's the NFL. The Dolphins are already popping their champagne from 1972 because both the Bills and Eagles lost yesterday. There will be no undefeated team this year. It does feel like, I have to look this up, Week 5 to be done with the undefeated watch, if that's even a thing, feels like an early point in the year for that to be over, but this is where we're at. So Bills coaches are going to address the media here in about 25 minutes, as they always do after Monday. Just want to remind you that we will have a wrap-up of that on BKL Nightly tonight at 8:30 right here in Rochester First. We are on every Monday through Thursday. The Monday show is always talking about the most recent games, so we will do that tonight. It'll be me, Caleb Carr, and Rachel Liebert tonight at 8:30 right here on Rock One. All right, yesterday, look, as much as the Bills' offense was, in my opinion, part of the blame, there was a certain wide receiver on the other side that had himself a game. Stephon Diggs, 10 catches, 146 yards. Look, he had to feel incredibly satisfied after that game, coming back to Buffalo, doing it in Orchard Park. And look, Diggs, hey, you want to say anything about Diggs and who he was and what he is right now? He is 2-0 against the Bills since they traded him away, for whatever that's worth. So Diggs was the best player on the field last night, and that's not saying anything when Josh Allen's on the same field. He was really good. He had 10 catches, 8 of which went for first downs. He had 2 that set up first and goals that led to 10 points. Did everything but score a touchdown and catch. The coup de grace would have been making a catch in that last third down so that New England could have ran the clock out and set up for a shorter field goal to put the game away. As it was, Diggs did plenty already. After the game, Diggs, as he typically does, and as all of us in Buffalo media have come to understand, took his sweet time getting ready to come out and talk to the media. He was by far the last person on either team to address the media last night. And look, when Diggs was in Buffalo, he was well known for being just a pain in the neck to coerce into doing an interview session post-game. Even if the Bills won, it was hard to get Stephon Diggs to get in front of a microphone. Last night, even though it took him a while, he had no problem talking to the media last night, to the point where late in the press conference, the PR representative for the Patriots who was in the room, after a few questions, said, okay, we'll only take 2 more. And Diggs is like, no. I got time for at least 3. So he was really happy to talk to the media last night. And again, understandably so. No matter what you think of the guy, he earned his spoils last night. He earned his ability to gloat last night. And to his credit, even though he could have come out there and said, that stupid organization traded me away. Look what happened tonight, blah, blah, blah. He was respectful during the week. He was respectful post-game, even to the point where he wanted to talk about his relationship with Josh Allen. And, for those of you who spend a lot of time on social media, you might have seen the side-eye picture where after the Texans game, Diggs and Allen meet at midfield, and it looks like Diggs has given him kind of a, antagonistic side-eye. Diggs took his time last night to explain why all of that isn't exactly the way we thought it to be.
That was my guy. And I'm not going to switch up or act like I didn't have a lot of love and respect for that young man. So when I see him, I try to give him that reminder. Like even last year, they had that picture, right, of me side-eyeing him. But they just kind of caught it at the wrong time. And I always wanted to speak on that photo because I was staring at him in a moment because it was like, damn, like that was my brother. You know what I'm saying? Even like we won in Houston, but like that's my brother, and like I do got a lot of love and respect for him. It kind of looked like a little shout out, but that's not what it was.
To be totally open, I was the one who had the camera for the side-eye photo. And look, that entire interaction last year after the Houston game wasn't anything notable. It was respectful. It was quick. It was what it was appropriate. Last night after the game, Diggs and Allen had another embrace. This one was warmer. Much more respect. I love you, that kind of thing. So I think whatever angst there was when Diggs was traded away, you get the feeling that has mended based on not only the way Diggs acted last night, but based on the hug that I got on the field last night. And you can see that if you go to my Instagram, ThadBrown7, or on my X page, ThadBrown7, in both cases. So you can see that for yourself. Either way, look, Diggs, he earned the high road based on the final score and what he put up in the box score. And afterward in the game, he elected to stay there. He didn't come down and, and throw some punches, throw some below the belt jabs at Josh Allen or the Bills about what happened. Even though, there's a good argument to be made that the Bills, who when they traded Stephon Diggs away, didn't just trade away a player, they kind of traded away a philosophy. They went away from wide receiver 1. We've got a big name guy on the outside that we want to / have to feed, and we're going to go with everybody eats. And for the most part, it's worked. Again, the offense was really good last year. The offense, despite all the issues we pointed out in the first segment of this show, has been productive this year, too, prior to this game. But in this game, wide receiver 1 won the game, everybody eats lost. And it wasn't because the defense allowed 40 points. Everybody eats lost because everybody eats wasn't good enough compared to the number 1 receiver. Especially on a team where, the quarterback is ascending and has good things, and we'll talk about him in a minute, but it wasn't like they lost to Pat Mahomes at wide receiver 1. They lost to Drake May in start number 13 or whatever it is. So philosophically, if you're Stephon Diggs and you really want to get deep into how the Bills' point of view of this, and I know he won't, but those of us who, are following Diggs, I think we will. The Bills not only said, we don't want you, Stephon Diggs, we don't want everything you represent. The idea of a number 1 guy, a quotes diva receiver that needs the ball, we want nothing to do with that. we're going to go totally the other way. We're not only rejecting you, we're rejecting everything you stand for. I'm a little hyperbole there, but you get what I'm saying. And last night, Diggs got his revenge. He won the game. Not only did he play well, but the philosophy of wide receiver one was the better one on the field for 60 minutes in Orchard Park last night. More in the weeds of this game, Diggs, you have to respect the athleticism where he's at right now. This is a guy that tore his ACL less than a year ago. October 29th was the injury last year. And he was healthy enough to play week one, and now he's been healthy enough to have 2 100-yard games back-to-back, still without making it to a year after that injury. You've got to be one ridiculous athlete to be able to come back from that injury that well, that fast. And when you think about what happened with Diggs when Joe Brady took over, all of us who watched the film, when people were asking, why isn't Diggs getting the ball? Where'd the production go? We would all say, we have no idea. He looks the same. The quickness is still there. The separation is still there. He's just not getting the ball enough. So when you look at what Diggs has done since Brady left, before he got hurt last year, he was on pace for over 1,000 yards with the Texans. Right now with the Patriots, he's on pace for over 1,200 yards. So the thing that was wrong with Diggs, and look, I'm not going to ever say the trade was bad. There were enough clues about what was going on off the field to indicate why the Bills and Diggs needed to part ways. Number one was the giant dead cap hit Buffalo was willing to accept. You're not doing that if you're a smart general manager like Brandon Beane, if there isn't something going on behind the scenes that is making keeping Stephon Diggs around not worth it. So I'm not ever going to say the trade was wrong. But when it comes to who he was as a player, right this second, the dip in production does not look Stephon Diggs related. It looks Joe Brady philosophy related. Because, as I said, all of us who watched him on film in 2023 said he was the same guy. The numbers in the few games he was healthy for Houston say he was the same guy. The numbers with New England, despite a ridiculous recovery, tell us that he was still the same, not just productive, but darn near elite receiver in the NFL. We'll see if it lasts. Because Diggs is still on the wrong side of 30, and you might look good in, September and October. Show me exactly what's going on again once we get past Thanksgiving. But for the moment right now, Stephon Diggs is still playing at a really high level, and he was the number one reason the Bills defense could not get New England off the field last night. And it was a combination of things. Going back and watching what happened, there were a couple plays where he just outright beat Trey White or Christian Benford, more White than Benford, as you might expect, based on who CB1 and CB2 are. There were a couple times where he took advantage of the fact that the Bills tend to play their safeties pretty deep. A couple throws that were caught in front of Cole Bishop. One where Bishop badly, missed a tackle. That was the one that was the catch and run down to like the 5-yard line. So it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just one guy or one scheme or one item Diggs was exploiting. Give him credit. He kind of did it all over the field. Also had a couple of really, really good individual plays. The 3rd and 7 toe tap leaning over the sideline. That's one where Christian Benford has pretty good coverage. Diggs still makes a play. The scramble drill down the sideline. Really good throw by Drake May too, but Diggs makes a pretty good catch and a nice job of getting away from Benford. He really twisted Benford into a pretzel on the scramble, not the initial play. I talked to Benford after the game. He's like, look, when you defend those running quarterbacks, you don't just have to defend 1 or 2 routes, you got to defend like 6. And that was a situation where he got burned on like route 5. You want him to make that play, and sure, the Bills paid him to be a top-level corner, but at some point, the reasonable expectation is not Benford staying with Diggs on that play. So it wasn't just schematic. It wasn't just the Bills playing poor. It wasn't just Diggs being great. It was a little bit of everything that led to Diggs, being the hero on the field for the Patriots last night. The other hero, of course, was Drake May. And look, I got to admit, I did not think Drake May had that in him last night. That was a pretty impressive game. Just the way he commanded the offense late. No touchdown passes, but led that game-winning field goal drive. And again, the play where he looks like he is dead in Daquan Jones's grasp, and he still gets the ball away to Diggs for a first down. That's as good a Josh Allen play as you will see. Now, Drake May is not Josh Allen, but he certainly has the physical tools to, live in that world, and you saw it on that play. One of the best things about May this year, I thought, was the fact that he had poise. He looked unflappable. Well, early in this game, it seemed like the Bills were getting pressure on him, And he was literally flappable. He was getting flapped, right? He didn't look comfortable early in the game. Settled down. I think a part of that was the Bills' offense didn't get out of hand. If that game is 13-3 or 17-3 instead of 6-3 at halftime, the other way, then, maybe Drake May continues to press and looks like he's a little more out of control. Didn't happen that way. New England stayed in touch, in front, in fact, and May looked good, for the duration of this game. And does this mean that he is now, elite quarterback one, pain in the neck? I don't know. But he certainly is not the Justin Fields, Tua, all the whatever the Jets have run out, the Zach Wilsons of the world. This guy's going to be a pain, from the Buffalo Bills' point of view. I don't think that the Patriots are a real threat to win the division this year. If the Bills continue to have major problems, maybe. If New England, really ascends. I will say New England's schedule is like super soft for the next few weeks here. So the Patriots could rack up a few wins and really stay on Buffalo's heels. But I'd be surprised if we get to like December and the Bills have to win 3 in a row to prevent New England from winning the division. That said, this team is certainly arrow pointed up. And, the days of the Bills having a cakewalk through the AFC East might have ended last night. Doesn't mean that they won't win, but it really felt like we were talking a few weeks ago, could the Bills clinch by Thanksgiving? That's off the table now, And look, the Bills might still, win by 3 games and make it look easy, in the big picture. But right now, the Patriots certainly do look like a pretty major threat, when it comes to not only this year, I shouldn't say not this year, but long term, Drake May is going to be a real problem for the Bills going forward. All right, we're taking a break. When we come back, Rachel Liebert will be in. We will do, you see this, talk about some of the cool stuff over the weekend. What do we see? We'll talk a little baseball, by the way. What happened to the Yankees, everybody? Oh, it is panic time in the Bronx. However, that is good news for someone here in Rochester. So we'll talk all about that after a break. You're watching the Endgame right here on Rochester First. The kids who are cool, they all call it Rock One. Back with you on the Endgame here. It is Monday, October the 6th, day after the Bills suffer their first loss of the year. We talked about that a lot. We're going to get into a couple other things here. Rachel Liebert joining me in studio, as always, for our weekly edition of You See This? Whatever was cool that happened over the weekend. I'm going to let you go first today. What is the thing on your mind from over this past first weekend of October?
I don't know if this would classify as cool, but it's definitely interesting.
If you liked it, it was cool. I'm going to let you have that. Go ahead.
So you might have seen this. Syracuse football lost to SMU 31-18 over the weekend. Their quarterback, Ricky Collins, had 1 touchdown but 3 interceptions. And Jonte Cook is their wide receiver 1. He had a touchdown. So after the game, this was our 3rd loss of the season, by the way. After the game, on a post-game show, did you see this by any chance?
No, I did not. I'm listening. I'm dying for this.
On the post-game show, Jonte Cook, who played his first 2 years at Texas, this is his first year at Syracuse. His uncle called into a Syracuse post-game show and had a lot to say about the quarterback. And I'm going to read you this quote. It's a little bit long, but we'll try to get through it.
Go ahead.
So he calls in. He says about Ricky Collins, their starting QB. From what I've seen, that was some high school football. My nephew is a 5-star receiver from the SEC. He got 3-star cornerbacks covering him from the ACC, and they can't get him the ball. I'm the reason he went to Texas, and I'm going to get on the phone with his father, and we're going to see what we can do. We can't let Ricky ruin our chances to get to the league. That boy is not ready for a number 1 spot. So he just goes off on the quarterback. Then the uncle continues to say, this is more than just an in-game issue. He says he's seen the practice tape. His brother sent him the practice tapes, apparently. And he's seen what he's doing in practice. Brother, by the way. So starters are built in practice. And he says about Ricky Collins, that boy sucked in practice. So really just goes off in this post-game show. His nephew is one of the better receivers on the team, his first year in Syracuse, goes off on their quarterback, who is not having the greatest of years. But I mean, you'll have to go back and listen to it because the post-game radio show posted the full clip of it, obviously. And it's just crazy. I mean, and people are saying, this is maybe why this kid had so many problems at Texas, I guess. I didn't really investigate what those problems were, but he only had 8 receptions each year at Texas, so he wasn't obviously a big part of their offense at all. But it's just crazy. I mean, he just didn't even care. Has just like told him his name and everything, said who he was, and was just like, these are the issues, and just completely called out the offense. So you'll have to look into it because it's crazy.
So a lot of thoughts about this. Number one, I have had parents and relatives of Bills players complain about things that I have said about the Bills or posted, and I've seen them do that with other media too. So it's not just limited to college. Number two, the college kids though are younger, and I do think there's a level of like 3 seconds ago, this person who's playing for Syracuse was like a kid in some Pop Warner team.
Yeah.
So as an adult, you're still used to being out front and saying what you want. Number three, as we've talked about it a number of times, there is certainly a percentage of parents that are just the worst sports parents ever, who think their kid is the greatest. They don't care about anybody else's feelings, goals, anything else. It's just my kid and that's it, or in this case, my nephew and that's it. So all these things are kind of playing together in addition to a media discussion, which, look, it's been had a gazillion times. It'll be had again. But essentially, everybody's got something they want to say. Everybody's got a keyboard, and you feel empowered to just do whatever the heck you want. All that said, this isn't really Fran Brown's fault. But it doesn't help with the other stuff that's happened with Fran Brown this year.
No,
with
not at all.
The faking injuries fine, and the questionable having the kids run sprints, and just the fact that Syracuse just frankly hasn't played as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is crazy. Well, I mean, so you saw the story. Give me your take on it now.
I mean, it's crazy because, like you said, I mean, it's not even. It wasn't like this uncle was calling and complaining about something someone said about his kid or his family member. It was he just went off on the team
coach,
as a whole, and mostly just the quarterback, who I think is maybe a sophomore. Like this might be his first year. I mean, yeah, it's his first year starting.
Yes.
So I mean, I think it's just crazy. And the craziest part is that he says who he is. Like, he's like, I am John Tay Cook's uncle, and this is my feelings, and I think our quarterback sucks. Essentially, like, word for word, he says, this boy sucks. So it's like, it's just really, I mean, and like, just like you said, just feeding into the entire state of Syracuse, the program right now, of people expecting them to be good, and Fran Brown having these issues, and the being fined for injuries, just adds into this whole culture of, like, what is happening at Syracuse. And that's basically my take on it.
And the weird thing is they're not like record-wise that bad, right? What are they?
They're 3-3, 3-3, I believe.
Yeah. So let me see. What do they got left here? Pitt's pretty good. Ranked Georgia Tech. North Carolina, can't wait for the Bill Belichick game. Miami, Notre Dame, and BC. So they're probably looking at a no bowl losing record right now if they don't, beat somebody who's ranked probably. Necessarily. I mean, I guess they go 6-6 if you beat Pitt, UNC, and BC. But yeah, it's looking like a disappointing year in Syracuse for sure. Good. All right, mine is baseball and a little bit provincial here. Ernie Clement and the Blue Jays are just dominating the Yanks. Clement is a Rochester native, hit a homer yesterday, had another RBI. The Jays have scored, like 85 runs against the Yanks in 2 games, whatever it is.
Feels like it.
And are now 1 win away. Now, Aaron Judge, to his credit, was like, hey, we've had our backs to the wall before. We just did this with Boston. We're going to go home and win 2 games. Sure, I mean, maybe. But Toronto was, the number 1 seed in the AL for a reason. Now, like, the AL, I don't think had the same strength that the NL did this year. In fact, like, I really probably would have taken all 4 teams left in the NL over anybody in the AL. That said, Toronto and Clement, have been really good this year, and especially with Ernie. He's a guy that has kind of been a utility guy for the most part, and to have regular time and to now be performing in the postseason is awesome. He's a good dude, went to Brighton High School, easy to root for. I know there are a lot of Yankee haters out there. I don't really care. I mean, I kind of root for the Yankees because it's good content for us. Yeah. But either way, if it's Ernie Clement in the World Series, Super Bowl, in the World Series, wouldn't bother me one bit.
Me neither. I'm not a Yankees. I'm not rooting for the Yankees.
Well, you're a Guardians person, so you are Team Ernie Clement right now, right?
Maybe I shouldn't have admitted that.
That's fine. I think people would feel a little sympathy for you. It's okay, Rach. It's just Cleveland. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for watching the Endgame. We'll be back again on Thursday. Remember to check out BKL Nightly tonight at 8:30. For Rachel, I'm Thad. Thanks for watching Rock One. We'll see you later.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 on demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.